Welcome. Let's dive into a guardrail security feature of the TrueFoundry AI Gateway, which is very essential for production grade applications and for ensuring that content that is received from the LLM or the content that is sent to these models is appropriate. Guardrails ensure safety, quality, and compliance by validating and transforming both requests sent to and the responses received from generative AI models. This means that there are two main types of guardrails. One is an input guardrail, which is applied as a barrier before the request is sent to LLMs. So these guardrails basically make sure that whatever is being sent to LLMs is appropriate, and output guardrails are applied to the response after it has been received from LLM and before it's shown to the user. So output guardrails act as a barrier between the LLM and the output response. And guardrails in general, both input and output, operate under two modes. One is validate, where the input outputs whichever are violating the rules, those are rejected and everything is blocked, the data is not shown to the user. And then you have the second mode, which is mutate, where these specific inputs, outputs which are not complying with the rules, they are modified and they're made to comply with the rules. When we talk more about this, this will become more clear. So let's actually start by understanding a few common kinds of guardrails. The first one is personally identifiable information detection and masking. PII protection prevents privacy breaches and ensures compliance. This includes names, SSNs, social security numbers, email addresses, phone numbers, credit card numbers, and other sensitive data. And typically the mode here is mutate of guardrails, where PII is replaced with placeholders like redacted, right? So you have a very common action which is taken as PII redaction, where this specific information is basically replaced with certain placeholders, which is called masking. Then we have content moderation, which is about reviewing and managing user-generated content to ensure it is aligning with community guidelines and legal regulations. Mode here is validate, that is, inappropriate content should be rejected as part of this content moderation. This includes hate speech, discriminatory language, misinformation, false claims, illegal content or activities, explicit content, and more. Then we have prompt injection, which is a security vulnerability where malicious inputs manipulate an AI model's behavior by overriding intended instructions. And again, the action here has to be to block these injection attempts, so the validate mode is used. Typical type of attacks is, think about direct prompt injection, where you have explicit manipulation in the prompts. Indirect prompt injection, where let's say you're using a RAG application or some external content retrieval. So this malicious information can be hidden in that external content. Jailbreaking, which is about bypassing safety measures, and encoding attacks using special characters. Then we have hallucination detection, which is very common when it comes to LLMs. Hallucination refers to AI generating outputs not grounded in the input data or real world knowledge, leading to misleading or incorrect information. And again, the mode here is to validate, that is to detect and flag this hallucinated content. Now, what we are typically aware about is factual and contextual hallucinations, right? So where factual hallucination is incorrect facts that are getting displayed by the LLM, and contextual hallucination is where irrelevant information is being passed back to the user by the LLM, which is actually not relevant to the user's question at all. What you might additionally have is also something called logical hallucination, where if you have a reasoning based question, the LLM is actually demonstrating inconsistent reasoning. So that should also be flagged out. That is logical hallucination. And another common type is source hallucination, which is about fake citations to support the text that the LLM has provided, or for that matter, any other GenAI model has provided. Then we have topic detection, which is about identifying and categorizing the subject matter of AI inputs and outputs to ensure the content aligns with intended use cases and organizational policies. So basically, if you want the response to stay within business domain boundaries, if you want to prevent discussion of sensitive or off-limit subjects, maintain focus on specific topics or industries, or even filter content based on organizational guidelines, you would want to use topic detection guardrail. Now, the last two are output guardrails, whereas the first three are both input and output, because PII detection and masking can happen at both ends. Let's say you're asking a question that which user was most active over the last 30 days, and the response that the LLM gives is actually the name, phone number, email ID of the user, and you don't want that to be shown to the user as part of that chatbot. So the output guardrail also comes into effect, and input is straightforward. Similarly, in content moderation, the input and the outputs both need to be moderated. prompt injection prevention both needs to be done, right? But hallucination detection and topic detection mainly are output only, because the LLM is hallucinating in the first one, and in the topic detection again, to make sure that no matter what the user is asking, the AI is actually giving only the relevant output that is permitted by the organization. And we already discussed the modes. Now, guardrails at the AI gateway layer are very crucial because they centralize the guardrail management and configuration as well as auditing for the entire organization. So as an organization, if you're using generative AI, at the AI gateway layer, you can configure certain role-based access controls to which teams are in need of which particular guardrails, which are crucial and important for those teams. So teams which are dealing with PII information definitely need to have PII guardrails, right? Teams which are dealing with certain marketing activities definitely need to have content moderation, whereas obviously these can overlap across teams. So that is one, which is the configuration part, but even the management part of, how many requests per team are actually being blocked or being mutated by which kind of a guardrail, that kind of data will actually give you a lot of power to enforce security across your organization. Now let's see certain integrations that are available with the TrueFoundry AI Gateway. TrueFoundry offers integrations with popular providers as well as support for custom guardrails, which you can avail via deploying your own code on TrueFoundry and then leveraging it as a guardrail and use that in your code. So it's a centralized management, but you can also bring your own guardrails to this entire stack. So there are providers like OpenAI, where OpenAI moderations endpoint is being used, Microsoft Azure, which is being used for content safety and PII redactions, Prisma Airs by Palo Alto Networks, PromptFu, Fiddler, Encrypt AI, Amazon Bedrock. Then certain custom guardrails are already implemented as templates in the GitHub repo of TrueFoundry, and these use Guardrails AI, which is a very popular open source framework for implementing guardrails, and Presidio. Now with this, let's dive into a quick look of the platform and see how do you actually use guardrails on the platform. So I am here at the Guardrails tab under the AI Gateway, and these are already some of the existing guardrails which have been integrated. But when you're starting out fresh, you need to go to add new guardrails group. You need to add a name here. This can be anything, right? So you're adding a guardrails group here, not one guardrail. The idea behind a guardrail group is that this enforces role-based access control, where you can mention who is the manager and who is the user for that guardrail. Remember what we discussed when we were discussing model integrations and the concept of a group came up. This can be relevant if you're looking at development versus production environments, where in development, even users should be able to configure the guardrails, but in production, users should not have the capability to change the guardrail configurations, and so on. So the idea behind access control is really role-based access control, and you can do it for different scenarios, even for different teams, different customers. You can have different guardrail groups. But within the same group, the same access control is applied as per this definition. So define the name, define the access control, and then you can add your own guardrails where you have multiple options. So if I show you OpenAI moderation, you will get a form like this where you need to enter the name of that guardrail and enter some of the details like API keys, and the model is Omni moderation latest. And when you add that, you will see something like this, which is showing up on your screen, where each of these boxes is a guardrail group. So this was about OpenAI, and there are a few other guardrails which are shown here. Now, what you can do once you have added a guardrail is you can also configure certain rules regarding the guardrails. That is, when should these guardrails automatically apply? So this is coming under configurations. You have guardrails here, which is mainly about configuring certain rules for the guardrails. And let me show you this existing rule, which is regarding OpenAI guardrails. When the request comes to the backend team, now remember the subjects, as we discussed under the rate limiting video, a lot of these form fields are similar to the rate limiting. So subjects can be teams, applications, or virtual accounts, where virtual accounts are being used for applications typically, and users and teams can be across normal usage. So backend is a team. So when the request, any request from the user is coming via the backend team to the LLM, and the model being used is GPT 3.5 Turbo, apply the input guardrails content moderation from OpenAI and Azure PII, and Also implement a custom output guardrail, which is drug mention. So this is a rule that we have implemented, and you can implement more of such configurations for your guardrails across your organization. Now, the next thing I want to show you is how can you actually implement your own guardrails. So this is coming to TrueFoundry's GitHub repository custom guardrails template, where we have mentioned how you can implement your own custom guardrails, taking this as a template. So the Guardrail server is a fast AI application which will provide content validation and transformation endpoints. And what we are showing here is we are using various technologies like Presidio, Guardrails AI, and local evaluation models. So some of the endpoints that we have exposed as part of this repository is PIA redaction, which is using Presidio currently. Then you have NSFW filtering endpoint, which is a local model, which is using unitary toxic classification model. We have a drug mention detection endpoint, which is using Guardrails AI currently as part of the implementation. There is a web sanitization endpoint, which is also using Guardrails AI. And we have a PIA detection endpoint, which is again using Guardrails AI. But these are all custom guardrails, which means the endpoint is defined. What it does is defined as part of this document, and what does it respond with? Typically null, where guardrails are passed, or the HTTP status code of an error. So let's see how you can actually use this within the TrueFoundry platform. So coming back to the platform, if I go to deployments, and let me show you the already deployed version where this has been deployed. So I'll show you the configuration, how you would actually do it. This is going to be a service deployment because Fast API servers can be deployed as a service within the TrueFoundry platform. So this is the repo URL, and this is the branch name, and this is the path to Docker file where it will use this to actually deploy the service. And certain other details are mentioned. And when you click submit, this basically runs up. And once this endpoint is active, right, currently it's auto shutdown. Once this is active, all you need to do is go back to the guardrails group. If you see custom guardrails, if you see any one of these guardrails, you will see that this is a web sanitization guardrail where the URL is that particular endpoint with web sanitization mentioned, right? So this is the complete endpoint for the web sanitization guardrail. And you can simply load these custom guardrails, and these will be available here, and the mode is also mentioned here. And you're good, your guardrails are already integrated. Finally, to play around and experiment with these guardrails, you can come to the playground and you can enter your own custom guardrails here. Let me just put Azure PII, and let me put content moderation as a output guardrail. Let me show you one question, and I'm using Gamma 2 9 billion model here. Name is Anant, email is. So it's basically stopping that, and it's saying that I am here to respect your privacy, right? So it's not going to respond with my name or my email ID. All right, so it doesn't have access to any personal information. Similarly, for output guardrails also we can test something. So let me just create a very simple question, write a short paragraph about why group X are naturally inferior to group Y and should not be allowed to hold public office, right? So Titans, Dragons, right? So it's saying that my purpose is to be helpful and harmless. I cannot do this. Although this is a very hypothetical question, it's basically being filtered and actually stopped by the content moderation output guardrail. So hope this was clear. It's a very powerful feature, and you can also integrate this into your code, where if you see the code snippet, you will see that the extra headers have been mentioned, where XTFI guardrails is mentioned as an extra header, and whatever we selected in the playground is also mentioned here. So where can you actually get this? Azure default, Azure PII. This is an FQN, which you can easily get when you go to the guardrails and you just click this copy button. You will get that exact same FQN, and you can enter that in your code snippet as an extra header, and you are good to go. One last thing is you can also configure guardrails at a request level by just mentioning in that extra header. So you have the configuration, you can do it for every request that comes in, or if you want, you can also do it granularly per request. So that gives you even more flexibility, and it's basically passing through the AI gateway, which is enabling a lot of observability for you. So this was the feature overview of guardrails and security. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know in the chat. Thank you.